Trigger warning. This episode contains discussions on cults, religion, and sexual abuse, which may be a sensitive topic for some listeners. Please listen at your own discretion. What makes a cult a cult? Is it mind control, strict leadership, fear of leaving? Today, we're diving into the world of Jehovah's Witnesses, one of the most recognizable religious groups. But are they more than just a strict faith? From their secretive leadership to their end of the world predictions, we're breaking down the signs of a cult and seeing where they land.
Paranoid or perspective?
It's time for you to decide.
Before we get into today's episode, we need to remind you that what you hear on our podcast is purely opinion-based and for entertainment purposes only.
Please be sure to do your own research and form your own opinions while listening at your own discretion.
Let's get into it.
All right, welcome back to Paranoid Perspectives. Today's episode is a part of our new cult series where we're going to take a deep dive into different groups and break down whether they fit the definition of a cult. We're going to be using 5 key signs, things like extreme leadership, control over members, and doomsday prophecies to see where these organizations land. Some might be obvious, others not so much, but either way, we're here to talk about it.
So, we're going to kick off our cult series with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, most people know them as the ones knocking on doors with Watchtower magazines, but behind that polite exterior, there's a lot to unpack. We're going to break it all down using 5 signs of a cult to see where Jehovah's Witnesses land. Let's start with their leadership, because this is where things really start to feel controlled. So, the first key point that we have is controlling leadership.
So, when I was doing my research, I found that their leadership is technically called the quote authority. And the authority is 8 men that live in New York. And essentially, they make and set all of the rules for the entire religion. So, what they say goes. And it's just this group of men.
I've also heard them called the governing body.
Yes, I did have that as well. Yep. So, the men in the authority or the governing body, we're probably going to swap those words out quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're same thing, same meaning. What they do, from what I was reading, they set all of these rules and they are expected to be followed without question.
Yes.
If you question these rules, you're gone. There is no room for questioning. There is no room for discussion. It is what it is and nothing else.
And I think they're also the ones who set up the interpretation of the Bible, their version. So when they read it, they interpret it a certain way, and you're supposed to follow it blindly. There's no questioning it.
Yep. And I was also reading too, like a lot of people say that these authority or governing body are essentially like the voice of God for the religion. Yeah, like that's what the witnesses believe, is that these 8 men that are the governing body are the voice of God, and that's why
The voice of Jehovah.
no, literally, the
Yeah.
voice of Jehovah, and that's why they're so strict on listening to these people.
It's almost like they believe he's a disciple, or these men are disciples.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a way.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know too much about religion.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna probably lean on you quite a bit in this episode, but it's almost like these 8 men are claiming to be prophets, right?
Yeah. So I am a Christian, and it makes me look at Christianity kind of in comparison a little bit, just
Yep.
because I have that religious background.
Yep.
I was raised in the faith, grew up, I'm still a believer. So obviously I believe in God, and I feel like there's some similarities, but when we look at this, there's the similarities on obviously believing in God, following the Bible, but then you could tell the differences on, for example, when we go through control. So they have the governing body. I look at it as, in the Christian faith, we have preachers that we follow.
Yep.
But if I read the Bible and I have a question and I think like, okay, well, he preached on, Genesis, whatever, this past Sunday, but when I was reading it, I kind of deciphered it a different way. I
Yeah.
could go and ask him questions, my pastor, and they'll explain it to me. And that's why they also have like Bible studies and all these different things, because you can kind of discuss those questions to make sure you have the full understanding. But they're not going to sit there and tell you, oh my goodness, no, you take it and this is what I said, you follow it, you do not question it.
Right.
Like that's not how it works.
Right.
And so Jehovah Witnesses, it's a lot more controlling because there is no questioning it. It's you take it and this is what it is. These are our rules. If you don't like it, you can be excommunicated,
Yep.
which we will talk about that later.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely wild that they're so controlling about their rules. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts of people who grew up as Jehovah Witnesses and they're ex
Mhm.
Jehovah Witnesses and they were telling their stories.
Yep.
And it was just mind blowing to me how strict these rules are.
No, I know, it's crazy. I just wanna put this in here real quick. I am also a Christian. I'm not an atheist, just for anybody listening. Like, I didn't grow up in the church. I'm not very informed. I'm learning.
You're just a
So,
little newer to it.
I'm a rookie. I'm
Yeah.
a rookie, and
That's
that's
all right.
okay. I'm trying my best,
And
alright?
I grew up in the faith, but I feel like I'm a Ricky too
Yeah.
because there's the same stories I've heard my whole life, but I never really like took a deep dive into it.
Yep.
So there's a lot more that I have to learn. I feel like everyone has. I mean,
Yeah.
until the day I die, I'm going to be learning more.
No, 100%. I feel like that's what Christianity is,
Oh, yeah.
100%. Anyways, so back to what you were saying about, like, the governing body. I also read I don't remember if it was on the Jehovah website or if it was one of the other videos that I was watching, but they specifically tell their members not to Google Jehovah Witnesses.
Do they really?
That's what I read. Like,
Because
yeah.
it would tell them they're a cult.
Yeah, no, literally,
Like, don't Google yourself.
don't Google Jehovah Witnesses, otherwise you're gonna, like, see all these things about cults and mind control and all this stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna expose ourselves, so don't. And the fact that they would tell don't Google us because it will expose everything. They're like, okay, yeah, like I'll just keep following you. I would be like,
No,
what are
literally.
you hiding?
Right. Yeah, that just goes to show, like, all of these people that are in this faith, like, they're being controlled.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
literally.
One of the ex Jehovah Witness podcasts I was listening to, this guy was saying, when you're on the outside of it,
Yep.
it sounds like, oh my goodness, these people are controlled. But when you look at the statistics, it's some of the people with the highest IQ end up getting pulled into these things.
Yeah.
And you would think, like, okay, I have common knowledge. I'm not going to get pulled into it. And like the smartest of the smartest people are the ones who are controlled. So
Right.
I think they must just be super convincing.
Yeah.
Like they pull you in and they really control everything. And they can get, I mean,
Yeah.
the smartest Elon Musk, they could pull him in if they want to.
Honestly, yeah. So then my question is, do the Jehovah Witnesses, do they claim to be a branch of Christianity?
From what I saw, they do not. They believe everyone needs to be a witness.
Yep.
If you want to be saved, if you want to have salvation beyond the, I think they call it paradise.
Okay.
So
Yep.
that's why, like, we could talk about this later as
Right.
well. They are big into doomsday and Armageddon.
Yep.
And that's all about, at some point, the world's going to come and take all the evil people who are not witnesses.
Yep.
And only witnesses will be left, and earth will become paradise, and only witnesses will be. So it is the one true faith. There is no other, what they call Jehovah, which is their God.
Yeah.
There is no other Jehovah. It is the one and only, and no other faith. And like Christianity, obviously we believe in God. My interpretation, I believe, if you're a different part of the branches and those who are kind of raised or have a little bit of knowledge of Christianity, you'll know there's different branches. So
Yep.
there's like non-denominational,
Yeah.
CRC, PR. So there's different branches. And those are just like, I always look at it as different strict levels.
Right.
They follow the Bible a little stricter.
Yep.
But in the end of the day, all that matters is all the branches, they all believe in God. They believe that Jesus came and died for your sins.
Yep.
And they'll all be saved.
Yep.
And I truly believe that. I
Right.
don't believe, oh my goodness, well, I'm non-denominational. We are the only ones.
No, right.
And I do believe, if you're Catholic, it's kind of like a branch of it.
Right.
There's different ways that they go about it.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, I don't believe that they're not going to be saved because I believe that they believe the same thing as us. And
Right.
I feel like there's different branches like that. They're all kind of, I'm saying branch a lot, but they all kind of branch off from the same thing.
No, yeah. Right.
And for Jehovah's, it's, oh, well, even though you are Christian and you follow the Bible, you're not following the same thing as they don't believe in the Trinity,
Right,
which that's a big
correct.
thing in Christianity.
Yep.
They don't believe Jesus was actually a human being that walked the earth. It was more of like a spirit.
Yes, I did read that.
So for them, it is Jehovah Witnesses is the only way. You have to be a JW or you're not going to make it. You're not.
Yeah. I did read that
Yep.
too. So, okay. All right. Well,
Sorry,
yeah,
little
that answers-
tangent.
No, that's good. I mean, it great answers the question,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it's either like you're a Jehovah or you are a Christian. Like it's one or the other.
Yeah, for
like,
them, it's not like, "Oh,
it's
well, you're" because I've had before, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this where Jehovah Witnesses come to your door.
Yeah.
And they'll come, they'll hand me a pamphlet, which little tangent, last time they came to my house, they handed me a pamphlet, and on big letters on top it says, "Are you sad?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "What is this about?" And then they were like, gave a little explanation. It's like, "Well, you might be feeling depressed because Armageddon is coming soon." And it was going through the whole doomsday thing. It's like, "Follow us and it will." I'm like, "Oh, so I'm sad because"
Armageddon's coming.
yeah, it's like the world's about to end?
I'm correct.
I'm like, "You guys have been saying this since
no, literally.
1914. Come on."
2012?
Yeah, every couple years there.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're the ones that start. So you know how there was like everyone thought the world was going to end when the year 2000 was going to come.
Yep.
And then there was 2012.
Right.
And then wasn't it 2020? Like
I
every
think it
couple
was
years, everyone's like,
2020
"Oh,
too.
the world's going to end." And it's like we're all counting down from midnight,
I
excited.
mean, the world kind of ended in 2020, but
Oh yeah,
that's besides the point.
but it didn't end like right at midnight.
No,
Like
right.
everyone's counting down for the new year at their
Yes.
parties, and there's people like hunkering down, like we need to gather water. We need to get underground.
Yeah. No, literally.
I wonder if they're the ones that start that.
Honestly, I don't think I'd be surprised.
Oh, one last point on the controlling part. They are big believers in the fact that disobedience can result in shunning or excommunication. So they're big on punishment, especially
Yes.
with their children.
Yes.
So this is a difference I've realized with this cult or religion, however you want to look at it.
Yep.
If you're a Jehovah Witness and they have their basic rules, and if you're not following their rules, they'll give you a chance to repent and come back to their ways.
Yep.
But it's if you are not going to follow 100% what they're doing and
Yep.
they give you that chance to repent and you don't and you keep following your own ways, they shun you or excommunicate you.
See ya.
And their way of excommunicating you, it's not like, "Oh, well, you can't come to our meetings anymore," which is what they call their, I guess you consider it a church service. It's not just, "Oh, well, you can't come to a meeting. You can't." It's you are completely cut off. If you
Wow.
grew up in the faith, your entire family, we are not talking to you. No friends, no, and you are raised in the faith to only have friends and family, and that you are not to speak to anyone who is
Yep.
not a Jehovah Witness. You cannot be friends with them. You cannot have family. Like it's Jehovah Witnesses only. They always
Jehovah or
say,
die.
yes. One of
Yeah.
their big sayings is you can live in the world but not be a part of it.
Wow.
So
That's deep.
they raise you this way so that when you don't follow their rules,
Yep.
you only know Jehovah Witnesses. Well, we're going to cut you off. You're shunned, and none of those people are allowed to speak to you. So now you lose everything and everyone in your life.
Yeah. All these people that have been excommunicated, their stories are heartbreaking.
Oh yeah.
It is terrible. I could not imagine not like speaking to my family or like going out into a world and not knowing anyone or not knowing like a normal way of life outside of my church.
It makes it really hard to leave.
Yeah.
And that's something I heard too
Which,
from
I mean, I guess that's probably what they want.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the ex-witnesses that I was listening to were saying the same thing where they almost make it where even if you don't believe anymore or don't want to follow it, you kind of pretend to just
Yep.
because it's so hard to leave when you have absolutely like what am I supposed to do? I'm going to have nobody. I'm going to lose all my family, my friends, everything I've ever known.
Yep.
How do I start over from that? Instead, it's easier to just kind of pretend and stay in it so that you don't lose everyone.
Yeah. Wow.
It's almost like having a bad ex.
No, literally.
Because really controlling exes tend to do that. They kind of
Yep.
remove you from all your friends, try
Yep.
and remove you from your family.
Toxic.
Not speaking from experience or anything.
No, never.
No.
Never. Wow. Yeah. No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's sad.
Should we
So-
move on to our next point?
We should.
All right. So for the second point that we have, the second sign that you might be in a cult, it's a us versus them mentality.
Yep.
So one of the points I had was if you're a non-Jehovah Witness, they're viewed as part of Satan's world. So it makes friendships and relationships with outsiders very discouraged.
Yeah. I believe that. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, like we were just saying, like all of these people are all they know is what is inside of their quote religion.
Yeah.
So quick backstory here. From where I come from, I actually went to school with a girl who was a Jehovah Witness.
Okay.
And from what I can remember, she did not have a lot of friends. She did not hang out really with anyone outside of school. And two, one of the things that I find so fascinating is that they don't celebrate holidays. They don't celebrate birthdays.
No.
I love my birthday. I love holidays.
Oh, me too.
I could not imagine not being able to celebrate anything.
Yeah.
And like in school, she would always be excused from class when we were doing Christmas projects or Christmas parties. And like whenever we had birthday celebrations, you know, like when you're a little kid, you bring cupcakes to school for your birthday and, you know,
She can't even have a
all the fun
cupcake?
stuff. No, she had to leave the room because she can't celebrate birthdays.
Dude, that sucks.
I always felt so sad and like I never understood.
But think
like,
how damaging that is to a kid.
yeah,
Like, I have a little brother, and he gets so excited when there's other events like that going on.
Yeah.
Like birthdays and
Yeah.
whatever. Like, he always tells me the stories from school.
Yeah.
But if there's ever a day where he's, like, sick or can't make it, he
Yeah.
is like, you could tell it affects him. Like, he said, like, "Oh, all the kids are doing this, and I can't be a part of it."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's one day that he had to miss for whatever reason. And now you're telling me that you're gonna raise kids and be like, "Well, you can't go to birthday parties, and you can't do this." So all the kids in class are so excited talking about Christmas with their families and their
Yep.
birthday parties,
What did Santa bring?
and you're purposely being excluded.
Yep.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any kids listening. Probably now's the time to turn it down.
Run away.
Right. Give me 20 seconds. So I wonder if like the kids for Jehovah Witnesses, like if they were like running around telling other kids that Santa's not real or like whatever, you know?
Like ruining it for other
Yeah.
kids who actually have believers.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like my kid came home and was like, "Well, this kid at school told me," I'd be like, "Well, he's a witness. He's a part of a cult, and his family doesn't believe in anything.
No, literally.
He's not
They
even
don't-
allowed to have a birthday."
Right. They're infinite years old.
Yeah. He can't even blow out a candle.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. Like it is so crazy.
Yeah. And that goes back into the control thing a little bit. But one of the podcasts I was listening to, this guy was saying when he was younger, he was probably like 6th or 7th grade, his parents would both work and he would get off school before his parents would get home.
Yep.
So he used to ride his bike to his friend's house who wasn't a witness and hang out with him because I think it was Pokemon. He said he had like Pokemon cards and he was really into that. So he'd go over there and play that with him.
Yep.
And one day his parents realized he wasn't home when he got home from school. So they followed him to see where he was going and they saw his bike out front of this kid's house. They
Yeah.
took his bike away from him
What?
and told him he wasn't allowed to have a bike anymore. And you don't hang out with outsiders. He's not a witness. You don't talk to him.
Oh,
And it was
my
like he got like
gosh.
majorly punished just because he wanted to hang out with a friend down the block from him.
That's so sad. That is so sad.
Oh, it's terrible. Well, it ruins like social interactions. And I feel like when you were raised like that, you know how much harder it would be to be a part of the world. So if you're like, okay, well, you know what? This is not good. I'm going to leave my family. I'm going to leave my friends.
Right.
But then to try and be a part of the world when you have no social skills because this is all you know.
No, right. And that's just it. Like the people who are inside of this religion, like that is all they know. So like if somebody's trying to get out or, you know, like we can stand here on the outside and be like, oh, this is a cult. But like when they're in it, like they don't know any different.
No. And
that's what they know.
they're also against higher education.
I wanted to talk about that later. Yep.
Which that also makes it hard to be a part of the world. So if your family is like, I think part of it, one of the guys I read, he was like, you know, they really kind of discourage it. Like once the government says you don't have to go to school anymore, like once you kind of hit high school, they have
Yep.
no problem with you dropping out.
Yeah.
Or if you kind of like follow to high school after that, like there's no plans for your future. So they set you up for failure to
100%.
never be a part of the world. Because if you were going to leave your family, but then your entire life, you're like, well, I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to get a minimum wage job. I'm
Yep.
going to give the witnesses everything. And I'm going to spend all my free time either going to meetings or knocking on doors.
Right.
Like they make it where you give so much time
Yep.
to the witnesses that you have nothing, no hobbies, nothing outside because that's all worldly. If you have
Right.
a hobby, that's worldly.
That's insane.
You're going to hang out,
dude.
watch TV, that's worldly.
Yeah.
No, you are going to go to a meeting. You're going to knock on doors. You're going to go to sleep. You're going to go to work, give us the money and come back.
Yep. When I was listening to ex members too, this guy, he was like, you know, like when we would go door knocking, we would take like an hour or so, like, you know, like their requirement is an hour,
Mhm.
like to be outdoor knocking. So they were talking about how they would like walk slow and like just kind of
Take their
like
time.
make it last. So that way, you know, like, cause from what I was understanding, this door knocking and like trying to get people into this religion is a part of their like quote salvation, right?
Yeah.
So like they have to do this in order to like essentially get their chance to be in God's kingdom.
Yeah. And I think they're required to, like, they have to actually record these with their hall.
Yeah.
And I think they have to, I don't remember how much it was, but they have a certain amount of hours they have to do every single month. And if
Yep.
you don't do door knocking for a month, you're not kicked out, but you're kind of considered like an inactive member. And that's
Yeah.
highly frowned upon. So you
Right.
want to be an active member. You get baptized, you start doing the door knocking, you start doing all this, and you want to be at the hall, at the meetings, clocking your hours so that
Yep.
you prove that you're an active member of their community.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like their main goal is to just like leave the excommunication like dangling in front of people like
As
a
a threat.
carrot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you better not do this or you're gonna get excommunicated. Oh, you gotta do this or you're gonna get excommunicated. Like I was saying earlier, there is no room for question, for
No.
concern. It is the way it is. And if you don't do this, then you're gone.
One of the ex-witnesses that I was listening to was talking about how once you become baptized,
Yep.
excommunication is a huge threat
Yeah.
that they kind of dangle over you. So one of his stories was, I think he was saying this was someone he knew. The kid was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he decided to get baptized. So, and 8 is a very young age.
No, yeah.
8 years old, gets baptized. Well, then his parents find out at school he's celebrating birthdays. He's a kid. He wants to be a part of the birthdays, whatever. His parents find out. So they technically shun their own kid at 8 years old. The father is allowed to talk to him as a disciplinary
Yeah.
to kind of scare him back in. But even if your child needs help, the mother has to ignore him. All the siblings ignore him. And he knows he still lives at home, but everyone in the family is like, don't talk to him, ignore him. And the parents are almost encouraged to find, oh, if you know someone that will take him in that's not a member, he can go live with them. Like basically you can excommunicate your kid at 8 years old. You can't go throw him on the street, but you can completely ignore them in your own household.
That is terrible.
And as an 8-year-old kid, you're like, oh, but I don't want my parents not talking to me. All I have to do is repent, or all I have to do is stop following the worldly things. Okay, I'm going to do that so I don't lose my family. And as 8 years old, I mean, that is messed up.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And especially for a little kid. Like, I'm sorry, but as an 8-year-old, like,
It's abuse.
yeah.
It's mental abuse.
Yeah. Mental, emotional.
It breaks my heart. I couldn't imagine. I mean,
No.
I have a little kid, and I couldn't imagine when he got to that age. Like, I mean, even now, trying to shun him. I mean, I don't know how you could, that would break my heart.
Right. And, like, that's a part of, like, growing up as humans.
Yeah.
Is learning, making mistakes, learning again, like, nobody's perfect.
No.
And especially a little kid. Like, that's on the parents to teach them the right and the wrongs of life.
And I think that's how they look at it is, oh, we are teaching him the right and the wrong. He is following the wrong. So our way of teaching him is we are going to ignore him until he follows the right way.
Right. So they're correcting it to the extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And correcting things that are part of normal childhood behavior.
Yeah.
As a kid, you're naturally going to want to celebrate birthdays with your friends in your class.
Absolutely. That's the best part of school growing up.
I feel like this is the craziest thing about this cult to me is a lot of them, I feel like most cults, they seclude themselves from the world.
Yeah.
Jehovah Witnesses include themselves in the world, but at the same time exclude themselves. So they physically live in the world. They go to school
Yep.
with worldly people.
Yep.
They work with worldly people.
Yep.
But they do not participate. So everyone can see them doing these things. And it's
Right.
I feel like that's very risky, especially when you're trying to control people and you don't want them to leave.
Yeah.
But somehow it's one of like the biggest followed religions still, like cult religions, I guess.
Yeah.
They have a huge following.
No, for sure. I mean, if you were to pull out your phone right now and Google your closest Jehovah Hall, I guarantee you that there's one within probably 30 miles of you.
So I need to look. I know
where one is close to here.
I know where there's one, like, so I used to live with my mom when I was in college.
Yep.
And I know there's one right down the street from her house, and they used to be there all the time. On Saturdays, we'd see them park their cars. There would be like 2 cars. They park across from each other, and they go opposite ways, and they would show up at her house. I mean, there was times where I would look out the window and see them, and I would pretend I was not there.
Yeah.
And I was about to leave the house. I'm like, crap, I have to wait till because I don't want to talk to them.
No,
Because
literally.
it goes out, oh, we just have 1 minute, and then they talk to you forever. It's like, bro, please, I'm sorry. I don't believe what you believe.
Just leave me alone.
I don't have time to discuss this. Like, I'm on my way to go get some food.
No,
Like, I
literally.
got things to do.
Yeah. Like I said, Google it. Google it, and I guarantee you that there is a Jehovah Hall within 30 miles of where you are right now.
Okay, so there is one. So it's 20 minutes from my house. That is the closest one.
Yeah.
And I, again, not giving out my location, but just a little kind of info. I live in more of a rural farm town area.
Yep.
And so for me, the first time the witnesses showed up at my house, I was like, looking out my window and there was a car in my driveway. I'm like, that's really weird.
No,
Like,
literally.
farm town, we have long driveways. We're in an area where,
There's nobody around.
so then
Yeah.
Jehovah Witnesses show up and I was like, at first I'm looking outside. I'm like, who is it in my driveway?
Right.
And then they came up to my house and I have a dog and I wasn't home at the time.
Yeah.
But I saw it on my Ring camera. So that's when I was like, oh, who's here? Whatever, I'm watching it. And I see them looking through my window and they're like, oh, nice dog. They're like talking to my dog, just like having a nice little conversation. And then
Like,
finally
I'm
they just
sorry,
left. But I'm
who
like,
are you? Don't look into my windows, freaks.
yeah.
Like,
And I
what?
was like, what? And then another time, that's when they gave me that little pamphlet about like, are you sad?
Yes,
And
I'm
I was
very
like,
sad.
I told them, like, bro, I got like 5 minutes. I got something to do. So you could give me your speech for like 5 minutes and then you can go. So they did that. They read a few verses to me and I was like, okay, cool. Have a good day. And they hopped in their car. And I did warn them. I was like, by the way, you're in a very risky area to be doing that. This is not a place to be door knocking. I know you guys are trying to do your thing, but
Yeah.
like, and there's towns, like my mom lived in more of a neighborhood.
Yep.
So it made sense. I'm sure they're used to it all the time. Everyone
Right.
has the no soliciting signs.
Yep.
But when I was just like mind blown that they were, I thought I was going to move out to a rural area. I'm not going to have solicitors.
No, literally.
Like, what are you doing?
Just kidding.
Yeah, no.
You got Jehovah's.
I mean, if you're going to do that, send the Girl Scouts over here.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, tangent.
Are the Jehovah's like the people, like, do you remember like when you went to school and you got on the bus and like they would be handing you those little tiny Bibles, like those little pocket Bibles of like the New Testament?
I've never experienced that.
What?
Yeah. Well, I also
Okay.
went to private school my whole life, so I never really.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
My only encounter with witnesses has been when they have showed up at
At
my
your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, I didn't go to private school. I went to public school. And so, yeah, after school, they would literally, I only rode the bus for a short time, very short period. But when we would get on the bus, they would literally walk up to the bus windows and start handing us like these little tiny like pocket New Testaments.
Like the adults or the girl you went to school with?
The adults. So they would be standing
They
out
were
front.
allowed to be there just handing out stuff to kids?
I don't think they were allowed, but they were doing it. And nobody like said anything. And of course, like you got somebody, like you're a kid, you got somebody outside of your bus just handing you free stuff. Like you're gonna take it.
Free
you know?
candy.
No, literally. And
Like,
it's like
yeah.
it's like this little book, and like me, obviously being ignorant, I'm like, oh yeah, but like okay, look at this little mini Bible. Couldn't tell you. I don't know. It was either the
You have like a little
Jehovah's.
stack in your nightstand at home, like.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you where those things went, but I got quite a few of them because they did it fairly often.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how that was allowed now looking back on it.
It
But
probably isn't anymore.
yeah, no, I'm gonna go with no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The world's too sketchy for that now.
Yeah, no, don't be handing my kids stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know who you are.
Correct. Yeah.
So speaking of which, Jehovah
Jehovah-
Witnesses have this new thing for kids. So they're kind of like conforming with how the world is changing.
Yeah.
So they started, I don't know if it's like a YouTube channel. I've seen the videos on YouTube, but they're called Caleb and Sophia.
Okay.
But they're these little videos that teach kids the beliefs of Jehovah
Yep.
Witnesses. So it's good for kids that are being raised in the faith or
Yeah.
the religion. The parents will show it to the kids. Now, one of the ex-members I was listening to, he said one of the new tactics some of the people are doing is they'll come to the door, knock on the door, and a parent or whatever will use an excuse like, oh, I have my kids here. And they'll be like, oh, here, like I have a video they could watch. And we'll put on Caleb and Sophia on their phone and give it to the kid. So the kid will sit in the corner, watch these videos while they talk to the parents. And then they get them through the kids.
You got me messed.
And
bro.
kids are also on YouTube. They're watching videos, whatever. So if
Alright.
they come along these, they're like, oh, they're nice little life lessons. And there's this one guy on
That's
YouTube.
sneaky.
Oh, yeah, very sneaky.
That's sneaky.
And there's this one guy on YouTube who goes through, he's also an ex-witness, and will talk about all the videos.
Yeah.
And he kind of like dissects each one.
Yeah.
And there was one that was normalizing shunning and talks about disobedience and whatnot.
What the heck?
And it like shows the kid's like all sad. And the mom comes to the room, sits on the bed. She's like, what's wrong? Why aren't you outside playing? And he's like, oh, dad punished me. And then she's sitting there and she was like, oh, and then like goes in like a deep lesson about punishment. And they like normalize shunning to these little
Oh,
kids.
great.
So they're like brainwashing them through these videos.
no, literally.
I'm like, first of all, if you show up at my door and you're going to knock and then you're going to try and hand my kid a phone, I'm like, no, you're not going to show him whatever. I don't know what you're
Absolutely
showing.
not. Dude, that's crazy. I didn't hear that, but
Yeah.
that's insane. That's so sneaky.
Oh, yeah.
This kid, okay, he's gonna like sit here and watch this video. Kids are sponges. They're absorbing everything that they're seeing and they're hearing and they're,
Oh, yeah.
like,
And that's their goal. And double-edged sword, I could see how they come to the door, they want to talk to you, they want to hand like, oh, we have these kids videos. And you
Right.
think it's innocent. It's like, okay, yeah, but then your kid's going to absorb that.
right.
I could see the people that do that, but then I could also see the other half where I'm like, I don't, just even general media.
Yeah.
They're changing a lot of things that they show to kids that not everyone's okay with.
Right. And what happens when the kid wants to watch that video that whoever came to their house, they want to watch that unknowingly starts playing these videos for the kids
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm sure you can find it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, you
You
can't.
can-
And
you
like
can-
you said, since they're sponges, like, again, I have a little brother. If he sees something and he likes it, he'll
Yeah.
come to my house and be like, hey, can you put this on the TV? I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I'll type it in and put it on. But he's like, oh, yeah, I watch it all the time. So I'm
Right.
like, yeah, sure. I'm sure that's fine.
And I'm sure that's how probably 90% of
Yeah,
parents
if he came and before I knew this, if he came over, he's like, I want to watch Caleb Sophia. I'd be like, okay, whatever. And
No,
I put
right.
on the little cartoon for him.
Yeah.
But now because I
And
know.
then they're they're learning how to be a Jehovah Witness.
Okay, did you see my text yesterday when we were talking about this? One of the podcasts I was listening to, this guy, also an ex-witness, was going through the series on what they're allowed to wear and not wear. So it's all about like modesty.
Yeah.
And one of the things he was saying is there's not like a standard outfit.
Right.
And things change for different people. So one of the things he was saying is like, oh, if you wear a sweater and it's modest, it's a turtleneck, it's a wool sweater. And, you know, for one girl, it might be fine.
Right.
But for a bustier girl, she can't wear it because it's tighter and that's worldly and that's
Not approved by Jehovah.
And one of the things he said was, if the sweater's too tight, to God it ain't right. I was dying.
Well, there's like what's the cheerleading thing where it's like the higher the bump, the closer to God.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Like with the poofy hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
The bumpets.
Oh, the bumpet.
I went through a bumpet phase.
I didn't.
No, I was like all about the bumpets.
All about the bumps.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, yeah, that tracks too.
When I moved, I was like cleaning out all my cabinets.
Yeah.
And I found all my old bumpets. I had like a pack that had like the mini one for like the little, remember when they used to do like your bangs and you'd like do it in the very front?
Yes.
The little speed bump.
I'm cracking up.
I had that all the way back to like the one that goes in the back of your head if you really want to Jersey Shore your hair.
No, right. Higher the bump, closer to God.
Hey,
Right.
I was trying to get there. I was like, how high can I bump it?
No, literally.
Oh, and the video this guy was showing. So it goes through, I don't know what the guy's called, but it's a witness video that they show. I don't know if they show it at the hall, but when you're learning about growing in the faith, they have videos that they show to all these people. They talk about all the rules.
Yep.
So it's not the ones for the kids, but this is like for more older adults. And he was talking about how you're supposed to dress. And he was going through the different things.
Yeah.
And it's not like a strict dress code. It's more just like you don't want to wear anything tight.
Right.
You want to wear things modest.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Okay.
But then he goes into the extremes. So he starts talking about men and says you shouldn't wear tight pants because if you wear tight pants, then you might seem to outsiders like you are gay because gay people wear tight pants and they want to show off their packages and their buttocks.
Right.
So if you are a straight person that's wearing those things, you might give off the wrong signal. People are going to think you're there.
Yes.
That way being sinful.
Yeah.
So
I did
no tight pants.
Everything that I like found or any website. I even went to the JW Facts. I went to Watchtower. I was in the weeds on Watchtower.
You're like, I might join.
Absolutely not. But literally, I could not go anywhere on any website while researching without seeing how against homosexuality they are. Yeah, so everything that I found, they were talking about how homosexuals are just like not allowed at all. Like absolutely not. There is no discussion. No.
And it's not to say, I feel like a lot of religions kind of touch on that a little bit.
It's touchy everywhere.
It is very touchy, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, so I don't want to get too deep into that. But like when you get into and depending which church you go to, when you get into the Christian faith, like even the church that I go to, they touch on it and they say, you know, this is right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
But they're not, you cannot step foot into our church and you cannot talk to anyone because it's more of like, hey, you know, like this is what we believe, but please come here, listen to what we have to say.
Yep.
We could still, you know, talk if you're part of that community. We could still talk to those people. You could still be friends with them. There's not, it doesn't mean, why would you cut them off? Like that's just,
right.
But that's how they are. They're very like, oh my goodness, you're going to associate with that?
No, 100%. And like, yeah, that's one thing I guess I've always struggled on too, like with Christianity, but topic for another time. But I guess like too with Christianity, it's more like it's okay when you go to church if you don't believe the same things as the person sitting next to you does. It's okay if you have a different opinion on something than the person sitting next to you does.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there is more openness for discussion and for how you believe versus how they believe. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not so cut and dry. To some people it is,
Yeah.
and that's fair. And to some people it's not, and that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, that is what it is. But with Jehovah's, it's like, no,
Yeah.
shun.
Which, if they follow the Bible, which I think they kind of pick and choose,
100% they do.
because if you follow the Bible, there's even stories in there where Jesus was here, he was going to dinners, and it wasn't like, oh, he was sitting with the king of, the kings and the priests and all
Yep.
the holiest people. No, he would go to a dinner and he's like, well, I'm going to go sit with the prostitutes and the beggars and the tax collectors.
Right.
And he would eat dinner with them and he associate with them.
Yes.
Because he didn't sit there and say, oh, well, I am only here for the best of the best. It's like, no, give me everyone because I associate with everyone.
Correct.
I love everybody.
Correct.
You're all my children. And it's very more accepting and loving. And like, I feel like it's a lot more of a loving community
Yeah.
religion, where
Yes.
Jehovah Witnesses, it seems very cold and very not a lot of love. Like, I mean, even as a parent to shun your 8-year-old kid, that's
Right.
not love.
No, 100%. Yeah.
It's very cold.
Yeah.
Another tangent.
Hey, that was a good one.
Oh, so back to the higher education things. I've seen two things. They're against it because, one, it's worldly to sit here and say, oh, well, I want to grow up and be a doctor. They don't want you to get higher education. They don't want you to be a doctor because that's worldly. You need to focus on our faith.
Right.
But the other half of it is, why would you go and waste all your time doing that when Armageddon can happen any day?
Yeah.
So you need to spend time knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And one of the ex-witnesses I was listening to says they're almost like kicking themselves because they do everything within their faith. So like if they have a lawyer, it's
Yep.
a Jehovah Witness. If they
That's
have a doctor,
crazy.
it's a Jehovah Witness. Like they follow everyone who are only witnesses,
Yeah.
but they are so against getting higher education, but then they only want people who have the higher education within their faith for
So
what they
then
need.
do they, like, does the governing body pick and choose? Oh, you can be a doctor. Oh, you can be a lawyer. Like,
I think their goal is to try and turn people who are worse. Like, oh,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
a
yeah.
doctor. You already went and did all this. Okay, now become a witness. Come
Yep.
become a doctor for our community.
Right. Yeah.
So that kind of is a segue into our next topic. The third point that we had was exploitation of members. So
Yep.
that's like financial, emotional, physical.
Yep.
So one of the ways that they do this is they don't believe in like blood transfusions.
No, that's crazy.
So, and I reference this a lot, but I listened to a lot of podcasts of ex-witnesses this past week because I feel like you learn the most when you hear real life stories.
100%.
So one of the guys was talking about he left the faith when he became an adult, and
Yep.
it happened to be within a week. And this was during COVID. It was like within a week of him leaving, he had to get a blood transfusion to save his life. And he went and actually got one.
Yeah.
And he knew if the church found out, he would have gotten excommunicated, but he was
Yeah.
already on the way out. So he was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But what he was saying is they have, what do they call it when you're in the hospital and they have like those people who work and they come in and they're like, oh, if you need anything to make you more comfortable, and they're kind of like talk on behalf of your religious beliefs or whatever. I forget
A
what they-
social worker?
So when I had my baby, I had someone in the hospital who came and talked to me. They're like, oh, well, if you need a priest or if you need this, like we're here to help. I forget what they call that.
Is it not a social worker? It's not a
No,
social worker.
It's a
a liaison.
maybe
Like,
something like that.
I mean, that's technically what they are, is a liaison, but like, I don't know if there's a specific word for them.
So I don't know what it's called, but he was saying there was a person who works for the local hospitals.
Okay.
And the way that he described it is they're almost like spies. So they are fellow
Oh.
Jehovah Witnesses, and they
Okay.
come in and they say, hey, this person's a part of my community.
Yep.
And they give you a special bracelet that
Uh-huh.
shows that you are part of it, and they make it known everywhere. No blood transfusions, no, and like all their rules, so that doctors and anyone who wants to come in, if they even suggest it, it's like, no, that's against our religion. Don't even suggest that. I don't care
Right.
if it's going to save his life. No, it's not even up for discussion.
Like, I wonder why. Like, do we know why?
So what I read is a way that they deciphered a Bible verse,
Okay.
and I need to look this up to make sure I'm correct. So according to their faith, the Bible prohibits the consumption of blood, including blood transfusion. So the Bible says, obviously, do not consume blood. So the way that what do they call it? The governing body has
Yep.
deciphered it is blood transfusions are not allowed because you cannot consume blood.
Okay. Well, good thing they're not drinking it.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So like Genesis 9 verse 4, only flesh without its blood you shall not eat. They ain't eating it.
No, literally, like, I'm sorry. You ain't a vampire? Okay, so it's like, say this mom just gives birth, right? Starts bleeding out, needs blood while on the table, C-section, all the whole shebang.
Yeah.
No.
No.
You're dying.
So that's what this
Sorry.
guy was saying. He was like, I was on, like, I need a blood transfusion to save my life. And luckily, so he says it saved him because it was during COVID time. So he was like 1 foot out the door,
Yeah.
already looking on leaving.
Yeah.
The church didn't know, or his hall did not know this yet.
Right.
And because it was during COVID, you couldn't have visitors. So the
Right.
Jehovah Witness spy within the hospital did not know he was there.
Yeah.
They couldn't put that bracelet. They couldn't put all that information. He did not disclose he was a witness, got a blood transfusion that saved his life.
Wow.
If it was not during COVID and that person was there, he either would have gotten excommunicated or he would have died.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. So they basically have spies on the
Good
inside.
on him for being sneaky, too. The spy wasn't spying very good, I guess.
Oh, yeah. But to
Fired.
to do that, to
Sure.
have someone on the inside that's advocating
Yeah.
for you. I mean, even if a kid, my 8-year-old kid needs a blood transfusion, you're going to go and be like, oh, no, sorry, he's a witness.
Absolutely not.
And he
I would
dies?
throw hands.
Oh, yeah. I'd be like, no.
I'm sorry. Who do you think you are? No. My
That's
kid's not
just-
dying. Wow.
Yeah. That's wild to me.
That's insane, dude. So I think one of the main, it's going to be a touchy subject, but one of the main things that I found on the exploitation of members is sexual assault.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably common in this.
So one of the
Religion.
biggest things that I saw was, so when they say live in the world but not be of it,
Yep.
they believe that they are above the government. They don't follow their rules.
Yep.
And I think that one of the ex-witnesses I was listening to, he says some halls have like almost a number of instances that can happen before they report anything.
Yeah, I when I was reading, it was like 2 or 3.
Okay.
They got 2 or 3
Chances,
times
yeah.
to correct their behavior because the people who are assaulted, they go to their hall and they tell the leadership, and the leadership decides then what to do with it. And yeah, the person, the assaulter, gets 2 to 3 chances to correct the behavior. If the behavior is not corrected, then I don't really know where
I mean,
they
they
go
have
from
to
there,
have
but
the biggest number of unreported or unpunished,
yeah.
I guess you can say, unreported sexual assault crimes because it's so hidden within the church.
I was watching this video of these 2 girls from Australia, and that's what the people that were reporting it, I don't remember what the website was called, but the people that were reporting it were like, yeah, like after digging into this one case, because these poor people, they're sitting there telling them that, oh, well, you're just mentally unstable. Oh, well, it's because, you have depression. Oh, well, it's because you have anxiety. None of this happened. Like, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault.
And they highly discourage reporting it. They tell you, no, you do not tell anyone about this. This is only within our church. This is only, you do not talk to anyone about it.
No, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they blame the victim for everything under the sun that they can. And then finally, these victims went and spoke out. And after, the investigators started diving deeper into it, they went and pulled all like the papers and everything that they had from this hall. And sure enough, there was hundreds of unreported cases.
That's so sick.
Like, it is insane. And I don't know why this is such a thing in this community, but it is everywhere you turn.
I think part of
That's what they talk about.
part of it is their control
Yeah.
and wanting to be in power.
Right.
Because, okay, you sexually assaulted someone.
Right.
That is a sin.
Yep.
We are going to, instead of, don't let the government go and punish you for this. We're going to do it. We're going to handle it within closed doors.
Yep.
We're going to punish you. And not to say that it doesn't happen in other religions. A big thing that I always feel like I had an issue with growing up was I hated the closed doors that a lot of families have within religion. So even within the Christian faith, there's, and not saying all of them are like this, but I just encountered a lot.
Yeah.
Where people would not handle things. They would handle things behind closed doors. So you go around and you see these families like, oh, me and my mom always call them the perps. You go to church, you're matching, you're on time, you have everything
Yeah.
together. There's not a care in the world. Nothing's wrong. Everything's
Right.
like, how do they always have everything so perfect, so together?
Right.
But then behind closed doors, you don't know what's going on.
Oh,
And that family
no.
could be a disaster. They could have,
Right.
a wild number of things going on behind closed doors. And not
Yep.
saying that you need to air out all your dirty laundry with people,
No.
but be realistic. You
Right.
know? And
Yeah.
that's one thing that always drove me nuts. And I had a lot of friends when I was in high school, not getting too deep. I'm not going to expose anyone or go into that. But certain branches of Christianity are a little stricter than others. And
Yeah.
some of them almost go into this a little bit where you don't tell anyone what's going on in your house. Like,
Right.
for example, divorce.
Yep.
They don't believe in divorce.
Right.
It's very wrong. And if you're going to get divorced, you are going to get kicked out of our church.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they are struggling with things within their marriage, they won't even go and seek counseling or get help. They go to church and pretend that they are the perfect family and they have a lot of issues at home,
Right.
but they can't tell anyone about it or even get the help that they need because they have such a fear of being kicked out of the church.
And that's terrible. Like, that is just sad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but I mean, I just believe that, like, everybody deserves their own chance at happiness, however that looks. Like,
Yeah.
you deserve to be happy
And I feel like
to have all of the unlimited possibilities that we do have in this country.
yes. And you shouldn't have to have a fear of being kicked out of your community because of something. Okay, if you and your spouse are going through something.
Yeah.
It should not be frowned upon.
Right.
Because, I mean, especially if you're being married for a long time, everyone goes through something. You're going to have, differences in how you grew up and merging family. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then to tell them, oh, it's frowned upon or you're going to get kicked out of the church. Okay, so then you sit at home and who knows what's going on behind closed doors.
Yep.
When, okay, well, a few people know about it, but you know what? I'm going to have these fellow people in my community. They're going to pray over me.
Yep.
We're going to go to counseling. We're going to try and work this out.
Mhm.
But then you both have the chance at happiness.
Right.
Otherwise, you sit there and things get worse and worse. But then you go to church and you portray that you're this perfect, happy family. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, wow, look, they have it together. And then it makes it harder because other people themselves might be judging themselves and based on, oh, I want to be like them. I want to have, but you have no
right.
idea what's going
And
on.
it's an unrealistic actual scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry about that little tangent. Religion is a very touchy subject in general.
No, right. Well, and I think that's kind of why we wanted to do like this
Mhm.
series on cults, is just because there is so many different views and there's so many different perspectives and opinions. And I mean, it is easy to get lost in tangents, but I think that's all a part of the fun.
And this is definitely the biggest cult religion that's
Yeah.
still going on to this day. A
Right.
lot of them, when cults are exposed, and I feel like it's because most cults, they have their own little what do they call that? Where they kind of like live on their own little area, not like a community, but like,
Compound?
yeah, they have
Yeah.
their own little like compounds.
Yeah.
And then they go and eventually whatever they're doing gets to the government. They go disassemble the whole thing, break it apart.
Right,
The
right.
leader goes to jail.
Yeah.
It's over with.
Like a Warren Jeffs kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with witnesses, it's perceived as a religion. And until you really go into it, like I never really looked at it as a cult.
Yeah.
When we first started this podcast, me and you started talking about witnesses because you went to school with one. And that's
Yeah.
how this kind of started.
All right. Right.
And then I happened to see a podcast on witnesses being cults. I'm like, what? Culty? Which I didn't know a lot about them.
No,
I knew they
right.
knocked on your door.
Right.
They're telling me the end is near. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Oh, the Jehovah's are back.
Yeah. I just thought they're like, oh, these are like, they're just a very,
Yeah.
they're trying to spread the word of Jehovah.
Right,
Cool,
right,
like
right.
I get it.
Right.
But then I started to look into it. And the more and more I looked into it, I was like, oh my goodness, and that's kind of why we're doing this series, 5 signs that you're in a cult.
Yeah.
So far, they're 3 for 3.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see on the next 2 if they really hit it. But, like, I didn't know about the birthdays and how, like, I didn't know they didn't celebrate any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then once we started discussing, I was like, oh my goodness, like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, you might not celebrate every holiday, but a lot of if you follow, like, Christians, we follow Easter, we follow
Yep.
Christmas, we do a lot of that, and a lot of them are religious like, they don't have a religious holiday.
Yeah.
If you're, I think, Jewish, you have Hanukkah.
Yep.
You have all those. So a lot of religions, I feel like, have
Yom
their own.
Kippur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most religions have their own holidays. Now,
Yeah.
Jehovah Witnesses don't have their own holidays. They're holidays to have no holidays.
Yeah. No, literally.
We're always celebrating a holiday. It is the holiday of no holiday.
Exactly. We don't believe in holidays, so we celebrate Jehovah year round. Yeah. Well, should we get into our next point?
Yeah,
you think?
sure.
Mind control and thought reform. I mean, I had a couple points on this one, and I already talked about the never Googling Jehovah. I think that's absurd.
That's why.
That is one thing that I'm like, oh, okay, like,
Tell me you're in a cult without telling me you're in a cult.
And you're telling me
They'll go
someone's going to
first.
tell you, don't Google us.
Literally.
And I'm not like, red flag. I'm like, okay, yep.
Yeah, like me, if I was to join, let's say I join the Jehovah's and they're like, yeah, don't Google us. I'd be like, okay, see you later. Never return.
Yeah,
Like,
don't go and do your own research. Just follow what we have.
exactly. Absolutely not. You got me messed up.
That's, yeah. One of the points that I had was they're big into telling you that independent thinking, like it's very discouraged.
Yeah.
And they're told to avoid apostate materials. So if you don't know what apostate is, that's like someone who used to be of the faith but left, or someone who speaks out against it.
Yeah. So the shunnies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like almost us because we're speaking out against it. I'm going to get a big old sign on my door that says apostates beyond this point, and maybe they'll stop knocking.
No, literally.
We should get sweatshirts that say that.
Honestly,
Proud
I'm down.
apostate.
Yeah. If y'all want merch.
Apostate merch coming next week.
Right.
Let us know in the comments. We can make some proud apostate sweaters.
No, literally. Yeah, I think one thing that I wanted to touch on with this was the bite model. Did you
What's
hear about
that?
that when you
No.
were searching? So Dr. Stephen Hassan's method is the bite model. So this is how you can tell if somebody is in a cult, or like this is essentially like how to know if you're in a cult or whatever.
Okay.
So the bite model is behavior, information, thought, and emotional. So under the behavior category, are they controlling of your physical environment? Is there rigid rules? Are there rewards and punishments? And is there dependence and obedience? So
Okay.
that's all under the behavior side. The information side, are they deceiving you? Is there propaganda? Are they discouraging you access to outside sources of information? Google. Inside and outsider doctrine. So like you were saying, worldly, unworldly. Thoughts would be all or nothing, good or evil, us versus them, like we were saying before. Encourages only good and proper thoughts. So like you were saying, no independent thinking. Thought stopping techniques. So I guess could go back to the don't Google us.
Or almost
Don't
following
listen to the apostates.
the governing body where it's like you take
Yep.
what we say and nothing else.
Yep. And then the emotional side, feeling chosen or special. Like only Jehovah's are going to make it to Armageddon or out of Armageddon.
Yeah, we are the only ones who get to be in paradise.
Guilt manipulation. Mom takes away an 8-year-old's bike. You don't hang out with Jehovah's. All this stuff. Emotional blocking techniques. Like, I don't know if we've touched on anything for that one necessarily. And then phobia of indoctrination.
Yep.
So don't listen to the apostates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just
you're gonna
thought
be
that was
excommunicated.
no, right.
Or I think they have different terms. I've heard excommunicated, disfellowship, and I think they recently changed it to something else.
I don't know. No, I thought that was really interesting, and I found this model, and I'm like, oh yeah, check. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a good one. They're definitely giving signs of cults. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I keep thinking, I'm like, this is gonna be a day they're gonna show up. They're gonna be sitting outside listening to us talking about them, and they're gonna be like, oh my goodness.
No, literally.
Honestly, if they showed up to the door right now, I'd be like, you want to join our podcast?
Yeah, that would be so sick.
We should try and ask that girl from your school if she wants to be a guest speaker on our podcast.
I would be so embarrassed. I would be so embarrassed.
You think she's still a part of the witnesses?
I don't know. I haven't
You don't keep
seen
tabs?
her or talked to her in years.
Well, are
so-
they allowed to have social media? Because it's worldly.
Yeah, she has a social media. I do
Oh.
know that. I've seen her on there.
That's why I would think you couldn't because it's worldly
Yeah.
and you can't be of worldly
Right.
things.
Yeah, because what if somebody's posting about how Jehovah's are cults on Facebook and you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in a cult. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. See, that's why I feel like it is wild that they are a cult because they go against the cult norms. Normally,
Right.
in cults, they pull you away from, oh, we're not going to be of worldly things because worldly things are bad. So we're going to live our own little compound. You're not going to see anything because they don't want,
Right.
and a lot of times they don't let people, like if you're a part of it and you have kids that aren't a part of it,
Yep.
they are only allowed to go to the compound if you want to spend time with them. You can't leave the compound to go spend time with your kids.
Right. Like the Branch Davidians.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We'll have to get into that. Add that to our list.
Waco. Ugh, I love that. Yeah.
But yeah, and then it's like with the witnesses, I guess it kind of makes sense because if you become a witness, but you have kids that aren't a witness, it's like, oh, well, you just can't speak to them.
Right.
It's not, oh, you can only speak to them at our hall. It's no, you do not have contact with your kids until they become a witness. You can go knock on their door and talk to us about them.
Right.
But that's it. Or talk to them about us.
It's just all so absurd.
My head has been spinning for the past week just listening to these podcasts and all these people's stories. And the more you look into it, the wilder it gets.
Yeah.
And it's just like the mind blow emoji.
No, literally. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Cause it's like, oh, okay. Like, and I think it's easy too for like us to sit back and be like, oh, like they're crazy. But like we were saying before, when you're in it and you don't know any different, how are you supposed to know? You don't. You just believe what
That's
you
the
grew
whole
up
point
with
of mind
and-
control.
Right. And then that carries on for generations. Like I'm sure like all of these, the girl that I grew up with, I'm sure her parents grew up in the church and their parents were in the church and like it just carries on for generations and they don't know any better.
They're definitely like a narcissistic ex.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, and back to like in the mind control point, one of the things that I saw was they are very strong on having meetings and repetitive study sessions to reinforce doctrine and keep members in line.
Yeah.
And they highly discourage hobbies and because it's all worldly.
Right.
So if you go to school or your job and they're not big on like, oh, you need to, if you're going to work your way up or you're going to make more money, do your overtime. They're like, no, go do your 40 hours, make your job, like whatever you can to get by.
Yeah.
And then come back and we're going to have a meeting. You're constantly doing something if you were not at work for the witnesses.
Right.
So that you spend so much time with them, which it's kind of weird because they want the money from you, but at the same time, they don't want you to go make extra money. I think witnesses are like one of the top groups. Like they're the highest poverty level. Like a lot of them live at poverty or below poverty level because it's like they do the bare minimum to get by. Everything else goes to the witnesses. You spend all your free time, all your extra money besides bills to the witnesses. That's wild. So the average income of a Jehovah Witness based on studies is middle income bracket, lower middle income bracket, with many earning less than $30K a year.
Holy cow. You cannot live on that.
This is due to their focus on full-time ministry and not prioritizing high-paying careers.
Wow.
Every time a witness has knocked on your door, or if you've seen them parked on the street, what are they driving? Beaters? Old cars.
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I've ever experienced a Jehovah coming up to my door.
Really?
Where I come from, it's the Southern Baptists.
Okay.
A bus drops them off. They're walking around in their skirts. And
I've heard of it. I've never experienced it.
Yeah, that's what was common around my area was
Really?
the Baptists. They'd bus them in, drop them off at the end of the streets. They'd split up in the neighborhood and go door knocking. So groups would go door knocking down your street. And then after they were done, the bus would come back around, pick them up, and off they'd go to the next neighborhood.
That's wild.
Yeah, yeah.
I just couldn't imagine. I mean, if that's a good way to spread the word, but at the same time, I feel like some people, like I get annoyed by it. I'm like, oh, the witnesses are outside, like hide out.
And talking with my parents and stuff, they like back in their day, like when they were younger, like the Jehovah's were very common. Like that's, and then if anybody comes knocking on the door, they're like, oh, is it the Jehovah's? You know, like that's the saying. But from what I have experienced, no, it's just the Baptist.
I feel like it's where you live too. So like when I was in high school, never experienced them. Didn't think anything of it. I remember it when I was little.
Yep.
And then when I got to college where my mom moved to, she was like 5 minutes from a hall and she had them all the time.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to a rural area, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm never going to experience them again. And then I was like mind blown when they started showing up at my house. I was like, what are you doing? Like you guys are still out here doing this?
Right. And
Change your tactics.
The ones that you're getting are probably from the hall that's in my hometown.
Yeah. No, they are.
So, yeah.
So they're a little wacko.
A little wackadoodle. Yeah.
Just a little, which I was actually shocked because like you would think because when I looked up and said they came from that hall, I would have thought they'd be like a little hill rod, a little hillbilly.
Yeah.
And they were not at all.
No.
Which I mean, a hillbilly Jehovah Witness, really?
Can you imagine? Oh my god.
They're out there like
in their
little curls blowing on the four-wheelers. Yeah, their camo, their little curls blowing in the wind.
No, literally. That's too funny.
Hey, you want to go hunting with me this weekend?
No, literally.
Sorry, I got some door knocking to do.
Coyotes.
All right, should we move on to point number 5?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the last one we have is, if it is a cult, they believe in doomsday or some kind of grand promises.
Yep.
And this one, check all the way.
Yeah.
They are big believers in Armageddon.
Yep.
If you don't know what Armageddon is, the JWs believe it's a future war where Jehovah, God, will destroy all wicked people and governments, leaving only JWs to live in a perfect paradise on earth.
Yep. And also to this point, so what they also believe from everything that I was reading on Watchtower and all this stuff was that only 144,000 people will be resurrected during Armageddon, and the rest of them are left to live in a perfect world on earth. So, like how Christians believe that, once you die, you go to heaven.
Yeah.
No, they believe that, like, once, like, you die, like, only 144,000 people are chosen by Jehovah himself to go to be in his kingdom, and the rest of the people stay on earth.
So what? I don't even know what to say. Like, why would you be a part of it if you think,
I don't know.
or like, oh, I knocked on enough doors where I will be one of the 144,000.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like they have to do this door knocking. They have to do all of these things.
So what if a tragedy
in order? Well, like I was saying earlier, like for their chance to go to God's kingdom, and let's say they still do all this stuff, but they didn't do quite enough. They're still going to get their perfect world here on earth,
but it's not going to be
but they're
the
not
best of the best.
They're not going to be chosen to go to God's kingdom because they're not a part of the 144,000.
Okay, if there's a tragedy, someone dies young, so they didn't have a chance to do enough of it. There's what's comforting them, like, oh well, they didn't do enough, so they're not going to be chosen to be in Jehovah's kingdom. But don't worry, they still have a chance to be on paradise.
Right.
Like, what?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, at least they could like possibly, be here.
No.
Or because they're dead, they don't get a chance to be on paradise either.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's not comforting to them at all.
No, and it's like everybody knows that. So the whole entire time they're either striving to be the 144 or they're just checking their boxes so they can get their perfect world here on earth. I don't know. I guess that's where we would benefit from getting the inside scoop from a Jehovah themselves.
Yeah, because they can explain
like what are you working for?
Yeah.
Are you working for the 144 or are you working for the perfect world?
Like maybe it's almost like a game. Like that's the ultimate goal. But if I only get paradise, like that's good enough.
Right.
That's because the videos
you didn't score enough points, so this is what you get.
Yeah, you don't get all the way, but you get second place.
Right. A participation trophy.
Maybe that's where they came from.
Honestly,
the witnesses were like, everyone gets a participation trophy. Come on, they tried.
Right.
You get paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're big on with the Armageddon. They're always predicting when it's going to happen, the end of the world.
Yeah.
So like some of the most famous ones was 1914, 1925, 1975. And like we were saying earlier, I don't know for sure, but when they talk about like when we had 2000, 2012, 2015, those were all ones where they were like predicting it.
Yeah. Maybe that's where it's coming from. I don't know.
Yeah. Because they're always talking about.
I mean, it makes sense.
Well, yeah, because you predict like, okay, what are we in 2025? So it's like, okay, in June of 2025, Armageddon, the world's going to end. And then all these people start knocking on your doors like, hey, the world's going to end in June. Get ready.
Right.
And then like July comes and it's like, yo. And it's like, oh, actually, you know what? Little tweak to that. We were off by a little bit. Right. 2026 in June, be ready.
No, literally.
Like they have to constantly tweak it because it's not happening.
Right. The governing body has to be coming up with that, right?
Do you think there's just like 8 men sitting in a room in New York and it's like, what do you think we should do for the next date?
Probably.
And then they just like pull something out of their ass?
Yeah, probably. I'm thinking that's how it goes.
I'm curious, when's the next end of the world date?
January 2025.
Today! Oh, okay. So they have predicted dates before, but as of right now, they state no one knows the exact date when the world, referring to the current wicked system of things, will end.
I almost spit out my drink.
So the current wicked system of things that we are living in.
Current wicked system.
The Bible does not specify a date on when that will end.
Yeah.
But the JWs believe that we are living in the last days and the end is near, with major events like wars and natural disasters serving as signs of its approach. LA fires, North Carolina floods. We are in
plane
the end times.
Crashes.
Oh, we've had so many plane crashes in the past. 2 in the past couple days.
Yeah.
4 in the last month. Guys, get ready. The end is near. We are in the end times.
Armageddon.
It's coming. You better get right with Jehovah.
Get right with your Jehovah. Otherwise, your plane's
You
going
better
down.
You better start door knocking. They won't get you a plane. Okay, maybe it's a little soon for that. Literally, one just went down yesterday. Sorry.
An insane time in the world right now.
I joke about tragedies because otherwise, what else are you gonna do? Cry?
No, literally.
I would cry nonstop.
Yeah.
Like, I'm one of those people when things are like super stressful and I don't know what else to do. Like, it could be like the biggest disaster or like half my family is gone and I'm just laughing. So I'm like, it's so terrible. I don't know what else to do but laugh.
Yeah, I get like that. I think I get like that when I'm mad, rather. Like, if I'm so mad that, like,
It's like
I
an
just
anger laugh?
don't know what to do with myself and I can just feel the rage inside, I just start laughing.
I
'Cause,
can
like,
picture like an evil laugh, like, "Wah, ha, ha, ha."
yeah, but if I'm in a stressful situation, no, I'm sitting there crying, bro. I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm over it. Let me go home. Let me go to bed. I'm done. You know?
I feel like I get a little bit. Sometimes I'll laugh so hard that I start crying.
That's fair. That's fair.
But like, welcome to life as a woman.
right. No, literally.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I had for the points. So did you have anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about with them?
I don't actually. I think we pretty much touched on everything I had, and
I guess if you guys have any suggestions for a cult that we should do we kind of want to do this as like a mini series.
Yep.
So we'll do the same thing. We'll go over like the 5 signs that you joined a cult.
Yep.
And we'll structure.
I think we should touch on the bite method every time too. I think
Yeah.
that would be a good one, like, to determine, even for our own sake, like, do they check this box? Do they check this box? I think that would be a good
perfect.
indicator, and especially for the listeners too.
Yeah, and structure them all that way. And then if you guys have certain cults that you guys want us to touch on, I did have a request for the Mormons.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely do that because I think they tie in deep, very similar to the witnesses.
Yeah.
A lot of the ex-witnesses that I listened to, some of them were even doing podcasts with ex-Mormons.
Yeah.
And they were talking together and they were like, just having like epiphanies, like, oh my goodness, we were told this story growing up, and the Mormons were like, we were told the same thing, but they like tweaked it a little bit. It was like hand in hand, very similar.
Yeah, I have done so much research and my own, like, viewing and listening of Mormons. I don't know why the Mormon culture just fascinates me. I watched the show. Everybody knows it, The Secret Life of Mormon Wives.
Oh, who
I
hasn't?
watched it. It was a little unhinged.
I'm so excited
yeah,
for season 2.
yeah. But also, like, the Ruby Frankie case, and
I haven't heard of it.
you haven't heard of 8 Passengers?
Oh, yeah, the 8 Passengers. Okay,
Yes, 8 Passengers. Ruby Frankie's the mom. Sherry Frankie, the daughter. She just released a book. I listened to that book. So the audiobook was 8 hours in total.
Okay.
I listened to it in one day.
Did
I
you
was
really?
hooked. It was so good and so crazy and so insightful. It was awesome. You
And
gotta
Mormons
listen to
have
it.
their hands in everything.
Oh yeah.
Everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a good one. We gotta touch on that one.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think Mormons, we should definitely do that as our next one.
Yeah, that'll be our next cult episode.
Yep.
Be on the lookout for when we release that one.
Yep.
And if you guys have any other cults you guys want us to kind of dive into,
Yep.
definitely leave a comment, or you guys could always email us. What's our email?
Our email is paranoidperspectives25@gmail.com. So just like you heard it, paranoid perspectives, all lowercase, all one little word together, clumped up, 25@gmail.com. And if you have any suggestions for cases, true crime cases, I think we're going to start doing maybe a couple little mini series on true crime. We're
Yeah.
going to do conspiracies, current events, cults, conspiracies, true crime.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our goal here. So we're really open to suggestions on what you guys want to hear. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and even if you guys have a story, something that you guys want to like have us tell your story, if maybe you were an ex-witness and you're like, hey, I need you to tell the world on this, even if you want to remain anonymous, we'll tell your story.
No, 100%. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. So if you guys got personal experiences with any of these cults or even true crime, conspiracies, and hey, if you were abducted by aliens,
We
and
want to
you
hear
want your
it.
story, yeah, you want your story out in the world, let
Yep.
us know. We'll tell it.
Yep. I think that just about wraps us up for this week's episode. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify,
Apple.
Yes,
Yeah,
I always forget Apple.
We're trying to get them all.
Yep. Give us a follow. I know on Spotify, if you hit the bell, you get notified whenever we release new episodes. Same on YouTube. I don't know how Apple works, but I'm assuming probably the same.
Yeah, I think if you follow the podcast, 'cause
Yeah.
I'm an Apple one. Yeah, so if you become a follower, you get notified when a new podcast gets released. And we're trying to do every Friday for you guys. So yeah, just look out on Fridays for those. And we're going to try and do maybe like a little current event series here or
Yep.
there.
Yep.
I think the way that we were going to do that is just have unscripted, just a little convo,
Yeah.
which we normally do anyways when we get together. So
Yeah.
kind of just record our conversation unscripted and release that kind of like a midweek mini series for you guys.
Yep. So, all right. Well, let's wrap it up for this week and we'll see you guys next week.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.